Hi, Henk Akkermans, Chapter 12, Supply Network Dynamics. Clip number 8, Financial Flows. With financial flows in themselves are, I think, not so complex, but you have to bear in mind that there are multiple parties here. The first party is you and me, the end customers. Their installed base, they pay a certain amount of money. And there is an historical amount, and you could have a drop size in the revenues there, which actually is what happened, which led to some problems. But it leads at least to revenues for the buyer, for the telecom company. The buyer also has costs, and there are many costs we don't take into account, but certainly the people needed to handle all those queries, those are costs. We assume that a certain fraction of those revenues for the buyers is also available for the supplier. If the revenues for the buyer go down, the revenues for the supplier also go down. If the revenues for the buyer go up, the revenues for the supplier also go up. There are some special cases here when you can actually have rewards, bonuses that you get from the collaborative KPI regime, but it has to be then active. The normal fraction for supplier is assumed here to be 1%, but that's just arbitrary, and that takes some time. The costs for the supplier fall in multiple categories. The first one is the cost for system maintenance. That is the people who are needed to deal with those queries, etc. And on the other hand, the projects needed to keep the system to the required level. All those costs together lead to a certain expected cost for the supplier. We extrapolate it forward in the future. The current revenues lead to an expected revenue for the supplier. The difference of those two is the expected gross profit for the supplier every period over a certain forecast horizon. That expected gross profit then gives room for investment. If you take off out of their required relationship specific IT investment, then you know how much investment there is. That may be zero or a negative number, and then nothing will be there to invest. Of course, if you make this pot of gold available, that is when the collaborative KPI regime up here in the equation becomes active, then you get a whole different equation and a whole different set of dynamics can start. And here you see that the bigger the room for investment, well, the more that you'll actually start spending. And that's also one of the drivers why IT quality isn't being improved and should be improved, simply because there's no room for investment by the supplier. The two other ones are whether or not the supplier will be willing to invest that money, and we looked at those earlier on.